Welcome to the final installment of the buy and sell lines tutorials. What you would have learned so far is what information to look at on a stock market chart in order to draw buy lines and sell lines. You'll be able to use these lines in order to work out what price to pay for shares and also when to sell them. You also would have had some experience in drawing these buy and sell lines on real stock market charts from our ebook. And on that basis, we don't want to use this tutorial just to teach you how to draw more sell lines. We want to show you some more advanced features to sell lines. For instance, what to do when sell lines don't work the way they should, and also when sell lines generate other sell lines, and what to do and what that means for the market. We've got a lot to run through in this tutorial, so we're going to go straight ahead and look at some charts right now.
We've used this chart to draw a descending sell line. We've identified a high point, another high point, and we've drawn a line and extended it downwards. You may note that the market overshot the trend line just here. That is a very common occurrence when you're drawing trend lines, and with experience you'll learn when to disregard that price action. One thing we would say is with trend lines, they almost always get broken at some stage, and this is where you would get a signal to say that that trend line has been violated, and that means a new trend could be about to start. The old trend is over. This is a chart for an oil exploration company. We've identified this high here to draw our trend line. We've connected a few highs. Just like our example, the market does actually overshoot the trend line here, but it doesn't violate it, and we're quite happy to disregard that price action because other highs down here are pretty much respecting that trend line. What you would note is the price is contained underneath that trend line. It's as if the trend line won't let the price above it. Until we get to this point here, this is where we get a signal to say that the trend line may be being violated and a new trend may be in progress. So you would not want to be owning shares in that company until you get that signal.
You may have noticed at this point that your learning is starting to become a little bit more advanced. You're now at a stage where we can start to show you more advanced features and what happens when buy and sell lines fail to work the way that they should. What you'll pick up when you start reading stock market charts is that buy and sell lines only work most of the time. But one thing that they do is they do let you know what the trend is doing and also the speed of the trend. And that takes us to the next few clips in which we show you how to analyze and how to decipher the speed of trends, which can be quite important when working out your positions.
On this chart, we've drawn a typical descending sell line. You'll notice that the price action is staying below that line. When it gets to this point here, the shares drop at a much quicker rate. And what we can do is we can draw a trend line in just to measure this. When the price does eventually get above that miniature trend line, which happens quite quickly a lot of the time, doesn't mean the shares are going to go upwards and a new trend is intact. What it means is, like a magnet, the price is likely to go to the original trend line. It isn't until you break this trend line that you're likely to have another uptrend. To illustrate this now on a real stock market chart, we've drawn in a descending sell line. This works quite well on this stock. It isn't until we get to the bottom of the chart you can see a few signs that the sell line's losing its power. Once we do get above it, a new trend starts straight away. But what we want to show you is at this point here, when the market fails to get above the trend line, the shares drop quite quickly, a lot quicker than what they have previous, and we can draw in a descending sell line. These type of sell lines only work short term, and once they're violated, they do not mean necessarily that a new trend is starting. It just means that the downturn is slowing, and like a magnet, the price will go back to the original trend line.
And that pretty much concludes not only this tutorial but also the whole section on buy and sell lines. So what you would have learned in this section of the tutorial is how to use trend lines to determine the strength of a trend, and also clues as to when a trend is going to turn and the trend is over. What we would recommend is, if you haven't already, read through the section of the ebook. We're pretty sure that when you printed the ebook out, you read through the whole thing anyway. And if that's the case, you know that what we've taught you in this section of the ebook is how to qualify when a trend line is broken. Because when you're trading with trend lines, buy and sell lines, One of the hardest things can be working out when a trend line has been broken, because sometimes you have a little bit of volatility at that buy or sell line and it can look like the market's got below it, but then it gets above it and carries on upwards, and it does catch a lot of traders out. So please do pay strict attention to that part of the ebook. What you are ready for now is to move on to the next segment of tutorials, which is the reversal patterns.